What's going on, guys? Today we've got the VS4-10 Pro here and we're going to go through all of the details. What's going on, guys? Today again we've got the VS4-10 Pro here and I wanted to do a video going through just all of the details and kind of go a little bit in depth on how some things are done, why some things are done, and just give you guys a little bit more info. This isn't a review per se, as a review from me on this would be heavily biased, as I've got to work on this truck and this is basically the truck I would ultimately build myself. But instead I'm gonna go through and just explain to you why I like this truck so much and why it's just my ultimate kit. I've done a ton of running videos with this, as well as a step-by-step build on the one that you see right here in front of you. Now, I also have the one that I've actually been running for weeks, which is a different one than you see here, obviously, since this one is brand new and clean. We're gonna start from the outside and kind of work our way inside and down as we go. Now, starting with the Origin half cab body. This is very similar to the previous Origin body, except now that it does have a half cab style rather than an SUV style. The interior pan on this one, again, is one piece from the front dashboard and actually all the way to the back. The bed portion of this body is part of the interior and not part of the body. It helps give you that depth that this body has. It is about 30 millimeters, so it should give you scale points if that's something you care about. But another nice thing about it is that it gives you a nice hard separation between the actual body and the interior. So for two-tone painting or just any detail work, things like that, you have a very clean and easy break. Now, I'm not one to give you any tips or tricks on painting, but even I could two-tone this setup without too much hassle. Many of the hard parts on the body, such as the grille, wipers, door handles, steering wheel shifters, fuel filler, taillights, radiator and shrouds, all that things that come in behind this are all a carryover directly from the Origin body that we saw before. The only difference to any of that really is the very rear body posts. They're a shorter version than was included on the previous Origin body post set. So if you had a previous Origin body post set, there is one that is slightly shorter on this one than the previous. That's really the only difference in relation to the body, other than the obvious visual difference of the half cab now. Another nice thing about this half cab body is that there is no little triangle in the back corner of between the cab and the bed. It's a straight, flat cut, just like a real truck would have. That little wing that you always get in pickup style bodies is always annoying, and this one doesn't have that, luckily. And of course, I'm a big fan of it because this is Scout-ish, and I'm a big fan of those. The vehicle does have headlight and taillight buckets. The headlight buckets are for a 10mm LED, and the rears are for a standard 5mm. So if you're gonna put a light kit in this, make sure that you're finding one that has a 10mm option for the front or a full replacement light bucket, as there are some aftermarket versions, as well as, when you can find them, the Vanquish Q series lights. They bolt into the back side of the grille with the 4 screws that go in through the front. The interior portion from the dash to the back of the seats is exactly like the previous Origin. So if you had any options that stayed in that area, they're gonna be a direct carryover. So any scale details that were made specifically for that or anything like that, gonna drop right in. The bed does have some differences than before. The old interior had an oval cutout for that tall style body post. This one, of course, now super short with those new body posts and mount directly into the bed. The body and the included Lexan inner fender flares are all pre-laser cut, including every hole for every little detail mounting option other than the filler cap. The filler cap is one thing that you need to drill and put in yourself if you want to use it. The only other exception is the shifter and where you want to position that. This body is also pre-cut for the clearance of the new molded front and rear bumpers. These bumpers come up a little bit higher on the front of the body than the previous Origin. Not something that many people would notice, but if you had an old Origin body and this Origin body and put them directly next to each other, you would see that this one is cut up just a little bit higher. And that is, again, because of these new high clearance molded bumpers, both front and rear. It's got a tube style design on the front and rear bumpers. The front bumper has a winch fairlead integrated into it, and that also lines directly directly up with the molded winch line guide that comes in the front cross brace for the servo winch mounting position. The rock sliders on this truck are also new and are molded specifically for the Origin body. The kit also comes with a universal slider option, and that's the same slider that you'll also find in the Vanquish VS4-10 chassis kit. So if you have a body that's not as wide and doesn't have such a long area between the wheel wells, then you'll have that universal option that will easily bolt up so you can still retain the electronics tray mounting positions and fit your body a little bit better. If you do go to the narrower sliders, you do lose the body retaining pieces that go to the inside just because of that reduction in width. We'll take off the body and we'll get into what lays underneath. This truck does have the servo and motor installed, but it doesn't have an ESC or receiver. This isn't fully ready to run, as I just built it for the how-to videos, and that part really wasn't included. But beyond that, this truck is complete. Now, just like the body, the inner fender wells come pre-cut, and they both come in clear. You of course have to paint both the body, the interior, and the inner fenders. On these inner fenders, I painted on both the inside and outside. That way I get the flat look when you're looking from the outside in, but if you scrape it off, you don't see through them. So that's why I painted on both sides. There is of course an overspray film, so you need to pull that off before you're painting. Just a little tip that kind of helps the truck weather a little bit better. The biggest feature of this truck is the VFD transmission. That is the biggest change to it, and it's got a lot of features and things to point out. The intention of the design of this transmission is, of course, to get the motor as far forward and low as possible. The combination of those two traits is what we were after the most. You could get the motor further forward up next to a servo or something like that, but it would be much higher. The VFD just gets the motor as far down and as far forward as we could while still protecting it. The motor itself mounts to a 6mm aluminum motor plate. The kit includes a 15-tooth pinion and a 56-tooth spur gear. The spur gear is above the motor, and then a chromoly top shaft transmits the power from that spur gear to the gear set that lies in the center of the skid plate. All of the gears in the center of the skid plate are a wide machined steel gear set, so they should take all of the abuse you plan to throw at it. The transfer case consists of 4 gears total, and those 4 gears are so that we can achieve an overdrive gear set. The case to the VFD is molded plastic. However, the gears in the transfer case are all held in place by aluminum bearing retainers. Those bearing retainers keep all of the bearings exactly in the place needed, even under heavy load. There is no flex of plastic to allow those gears to try and separate. The other purpose of those bearing plates is so that we can actually move some of those gears around when we want to use optional gear sets that will be available for this transmission. Currently, out of the box, this truck has a 6.5% overdrive to the front axle. That'll aid you in tighter turning, better climbing, and better descending. 6.5% overdrive is a small amount of overdrive, but it's very usable for everyday trail riding and still gives you a performance advantage. Optional gear sets for much higher percentage overdrives will be available soon, and those will be for performance-minded people who are really trying to push the truck to the limits, but maybe aren't planning to do the long trail rides as much as what this truck is set up for currently. The entire VFD transmission can come out in one piece, both the transfer case and motor plate, spur gear cover, the whole thing. There's 3 screws by the transfer case, 2 for the spur gear cover up front, and 1 screw in the bottom of the skid plate that goes into the motor plate. And then the entire transmission comes out in one piece, just like you would expect from a regular type of transmission. The shrouded portion of the transmission just behind the motor plate is a decorative cover that's made to look and be styled after a traditional bell housing like you may see in a full-size vehicle. Behind that shroud, there's a secondary shroud that is supposed to look more like a standard transmission case. Then there is a removable inspection plate behind that. That is for scale style to look similar to how you would see on several full-size transmissions. The transfer case housing itself is styled after an Atlas transfer case. That transfer case does offset the front output and centers the rear output. With that offset output of the transfer case, as well as the offset front pumpkin on the axle, that's how we're able to achieve that super low motor position. The drive shaft runs right next to the motor. That's why this transmission wouldn't work with a standard centered axle, because the motor actually occupies the space where a drive shaft would typically be. The transmission ties into the entire chassis assembly to really add a lot of rigidity as well. The 2 screws that go through the spur gear cover and motor plate tie into the front chassis brace. And then the transmission is braced with 2 aluminum posts through the center center section and goes to the transfer case area, which is attached to the skid plate with 3 screws. And the additional screw in the bottom of the skid plate that goes into the motor plate helps just tie everything together even further and keep that skid plate tucked way up. In the case that it ever was able to catch on anything, it wouldn't want to pull down because it's firmly attached to that front motor plate. The molded front cross brace is the same one that you'll have seen in the Vanquish VS4-10 chassis kit. And that molded cross brace ties into the transmission and fills the chassis rails with material all the way to the very front where the new bumpers mount to. So the chassis has no ability to flex in there because it's just completely filled. The rear chassis brace is very much the same, filling the frame rails from the front all the way up to this mid-mounted low battery position. That piece fills the chassis rails, integrates in a scale fuel cell that has the ability to hold electronics or things like that if you'd like, or it comes with a plug to make sure that no debris gets inside. The rear chassis brace ties into the battery tray with a servo mount, and that servo mount is for the optional dig for the VFD transmission. The dig will be available separately and you can add it but not have to change anything else in the truck. Basically, you can put the servo in, change out the rear half of the transmission case with the new Hertz dig option, and everything stays nice and low profile. You don't have to change drive shafts or anything else. No battery position changes, nothing. As I mentioned, the battery tray mounts to the rear cross brace through that servo mount, and it also ties into both sides of the chassis with some standoffs that go into the rock slider bases. The battery tray is aluminum, and being that it ties in on both sides and to the rear, it just helps make this chassis extremely rigid. Speaking of the battery tray, that is for a full-size battery, and it includes 2 Velcro straps. Now, if you don't want to run the battery in that location, you can not install that rear battery tray and you'll be just fine. The side electronics trays actually have slots for the Velcro battery straps in case you want to run smaller batteries on the side. During testing and shooting videos and things like that, I've run both setups. I'll run larger packs in the back when we go up hiking and run for long trips. I'll run a 4,000 milliamp pack in the back and just run for a few hours. But if I was trying to be ultra performance minded, I have ran either small 22 or 2300 milliamp 3S packs on the side, or I've been running 1300 milliamp 4S packs at times as well. Currently in this truck, I have a 2300 kV Holmes Polar Pro motor. This motor is a great motor for 4S. I really enjoy driving that setup. With this, I would probably pair it with a Mamba X ESC. In my other truck, I've been running a Tekin Pro 4 3300 kV with an RX4. That setup I mainly run on 3S. The rear chassis brace is filled in the center as well, and while it does help add a little bit of strength, it's also for appearance. Whenever you do happen to be on your side, now you won't be able to see up through the truck just because it's a nice solid piece. And speaking of the bottom, the skid plate for the VFD has additional details as well. Now this is an extended skid plate compared to what you may be used to. It has the standard center section where all of your links mount, and then it has this extended portion to the front. And that is what protects the motor. Now this has some holes in the bottom mainly for style and kind of a faux access panel for what would normally be your oil pan. It's all just for style. It'll also help debris fall out whenever dust or things like that are sure to kind of get kicked up in that area, but should easily fall out through those holes. And while that skid plate does come up to help protect the motor, and the motor sits nice and low, tucked in, you can't really see it from the top all that well, but there is plenty of airflow from both sides. So your motor won't see additional heat due to its location. It's even possible to maybe say that you could see a slight bit of improved thermals just because it is actually open from the sides a little bit compared to being completely closed off in the center of the truck. The included tires are the same VXT tires that were included with the last kit. This is a soft, sticky compound tire. However, it does have a thicker sidewall, so it is a firm feeling tire even though it does have quite a bit of grip. The foams that are included in these tires are slightly narrower and slightly softer than the previous version of the VS4-10, if you're familiar with that. It does aid in getting the tires onto the included incision beadlock wheels a little bit. The overall height of these tires is 4.65 inches. The truck will accept a 4.75 inch tall 1.9 tire if you desire a little bit more height. Overall, I really do like the height of the 4.65s on this truck, but again, it will accept those slightly larger tires. The molded incision beadlock wheels are unchanged from the previous version. They do come with 2 hub options, but the truck was designed to use the number 4 hub that is included. The number 7 is slightly wider and not the one that I would suggest for building this truck stock out of the box. The included shocks are the Incision 90mm scale shocks with a soft spring rate. The medium spring rate is what normally comes in the Incision shocks when you buy them aftermarket. But on the VS410s, both the previous VS410 and the VS410 Pro have both come with the soft spring rates. Previously, the optional spring rate packs that were available from Vanquish only had a soft and a firm spring in there, since most of the shocks included medium rates. Now the spring package has been upgraded and includes the soft, medium, and firm. So if you have a VS410 and you want to play around with the spring rates, you can get the optional pack and you can get a medium and a firm rate if you'd like to stiffen up the suspension. Personally, I've been running with the stock spring rates the entire time and I haven't really felt like changing those out. I think it's been performing great for me. Currently in my VS410s, I'm running a 60 weight oil. That's been my preference at this point. I've kind of stepped up to the higher weights and I'm really enjoying how that makes the suspension feel. Continuing to move downwards, the Incision stainless links are included throughout the truck. These are again an unchanged design from the previous version, so nothing new there. They're 1/4 inch stainless lower, profiled stainless uppers, and you have a profiled drag link and panhard up front. The panhard mount on the chassis is an anodized aluminum and it comes in black. The truck is offered in both a clear version, which is this like you see here, and a black version, and that's black anodized axles. Regardless of which one you choose, the panhard mount is always black anodized aluminum. The axles on this truck are new compared to the previous version, and now they're an F9 style design. If you're not familiar with what this style axle is compared to the other one, the F9 design is something that would be referred to as a fabricated style housing in the full-size world, where the center section of the axle is actually made out of plate steel that's been bent and welded together to form that style of an axle. This is typically used on high performance or custom built vehicles, so it's just a difference in design. The previous one was modeled after the Rockjock Dana 44 that Currie Enterprise also offers, and that is a cast center section to the axle. Both of the Vanquish versions are a machined aluminum, just made to mimic the look of both of those. If you've never seen an F9 style housing, it uses what's called a dropout third member. This is something you'll see in the full-size world, and that's where the ring and pinion gear are actually housed in a unit that bolts into the axle separately. So the third member on this actually comes out and everything is retained. You can spin it just like you would normally be able to spin the gears when they're inside of an axle. This truck does come with chromoly universal joints in the front and chromoly straight axles in the rear. The knuckles on this truck are designed to look like a cast style knuckle that you would see in the full-size world as well, and it has a bolt-on high steer arm. Again, something that's made to mimic the style and performance of full-size vehicles. This does help double shear all of the mounting of the links at the axle side. Something else to note is that the knuckles on this truck may look very similar to the previous versions, but they have been modified and they allow you to get over 50 degrees of steering. Those universals work fine at that angle as well. The front axle is totally new, obviously, with the offset. The third member had to change because of the design of how the links and things like that mount. And the rear axle is very similar to the previous F9 axle offered by Vanquish, but with some small changes. Spacing between the link and shock mounts has been tightened up to perfectly fit the pivot balls that are included with the Incision links, and the third member has been modified to give you a smoother approach angle to that rear axle. This will help to deflect the rocks off of the third member and help you carry along the terrain less impeded. The ring and pinion in these axles are machined, and the ring gear is the 6-bolt style that has been offered from Vanquish for quite a while. With that, of course, is also a 6-bolt style spool. Connecting those axles to the VFD transmission is the Incision machined steel drive shafts. These should give you years and years of trouble-free running. The new molded rock sliders and rock slider bases are new and give you a nice smooth transition. No hard edges to catch you on, allows you to go through the rocks and just kind of slide over things as needed. The link geometry at the skid plate has been slightly modified from before, but the same link lengths are used throughout. As I mentioned, this is really my ideal trail truck. It's how I love to build vehicles. It's bulletproof. I can just throw anything I want at it. It will handle it. I'm not worried about breakage. It's dependable. It's got this styling that I really like. And just overall, it is extremely satisfying to drive. As I mentioned, this isn't a review. I'm just trying to give you all the information and some insight on why things are done and how they're done, and maybe a detail or two that you maybe wouldn't have picked up on if I wasn't able to show you or tell you why or how it was done. I'm sure there's details that I've left out, but those are the main bullet points. I've been showing you guys running videos of this truck for probably over a month at this point, and it's just, I really enjoy driving it. It's got me out more, just wanting to drive it more and more. And I think that Any of you guys who choose to pick it up as well will understand why. I totally understand that this is a expensive truck and it's not going to be for everyone. A lot of people don't want to just put everything down at once, and it's understandable. It's not a truck for everyone, but for those who do pick it up, I'm positive that you'll enjoy driving it. For any of you guys who have one of the old versions or are picking up this one or just interested in them or want a chassis kit, there's a great group on Facebook of VS4-10 owners. I'll link it below. Just a good group of owners with a lot of insight. If you have any questions or want to just see paint schemes or details or custom builds, it's a great place to go for that. These trucks mean a lot to me for a lot of reasons, and there is so much time in these. And I'm not the designer of the things that you see here, but being here, getting to work on the team, everything is a special thing for me. And those of us who got to work on the project beforehand in any aspect, we're people who truly care about the hobby and really enjoy it. We go out and we drive our trucks as often as we can. We're actual RC people who really care about what we're building because we're going to drive them. But those are my thoughts on the VS4-10 Pro. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Drop a comment below if you're getting one, if you're not getting one, why you are, why you're not, whatever you got. I appreciate all the comments. I like all the interaction. You guys are always great in the comments. I appreciate everything. I appreciate all of you guys who watch. It means a lot. Thanks again for your support. Hit the like button if you enjoy the videos. Subscribe if you're not already. Hit the notification bell so you see the videos as soon as they get uploaded. Again, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you on the next one.